Hi there, Sandi McIver here, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Also, welcome to the Alex Syberia and Lindy's Magical Collab and YouTube Hop. Today I'm going to be creating with the Alex Syberia Designs watercolor flowers and stamp and die set, and a new release from Lindy's Magicals. This is called Tea and Crumpets, and the colors are fabulous. As you can see, I have swatched all the colors out. This is a fun thing to do when you get some of these new powders. I have die cut a whole bunch of tags, and I've done those in watercolor paper. It was great fun shaking these all out and activating them and seeing all the pretty new colors, and I think you're going to like them too. We are going to do a little bit of that today, right after I decide which colors I'm going to use. I'm kind of looking at these four, and I'm going to set the rest aside for another project. Some of these names are hilarious. Butter the Bread Blue, Pinkies Up Pink, Lizzie's Cup of Tea Teal, Starburst Sprays, Gag Me with a Spoon Gray. Crazy name, but I gotta tell you, I love the gray. Okay, so I'm going to move my swatches out of the way because we're going to be doing some spraying and some shaking. We have new containers. Lindy's has changed their containers over, and they're a little shaky thing, which is kind of cool. As you can see, I have got some watercolor paper and a little bit of paper towel. I'm working on top of my glass mat because it's easy to clean up. And I have spritzed my paper on both sides because that stops it from rolling up so much when it gets really wet. So here is the new shaker bottle and the lid, and I just love this. Great improvement. Going to sprinkle out some of this pretty color, and we are starting with the Butter the Bread Blue. And once you get the pigment down, you want to spritz it again, and that activates the pigment and starts to move the color around. Okay, so you can really split this, you can pick it up, you can move it around, or in this case, I am just going to set that aside and let it dry as it is because I want kind of a splotchy effect for that one. I'm going to move on to my next color. And I like doing all of this at the same time, get the wet, get all the splotches done, and then dry all the papers, and then move on to creating the card. And then you can just clean up your mess. Okay, so the next one up is Pinkies Up Pink. And again, shaking this out. This is kind of a cool thing. It's got quite a bit of kind of an orangey color. It has a little fleck of yellow, and there's also little flecks of pink in there occasionally. It's very pretty. The other thing it has is a beautiful shimmer. It's hard to describe and really hard to show you on camera. These things shimmer like crazy when they were dry. Okay, I got a couple of white spots, so I'm just going to move some of that water around with my paintbrush and add a little bit more of the pigment in some of the areas that didn't quite get enough. I'm using the Tim Holtz spritzer, and that's just plain water in there. Adding a little bit more pigment, and I'm going to set this one aside to dry as well. I want that pigment to kind of stay lumpy like that because I want some of the blotches in my flowers. So I'm doing that on purpose. If you want a really, really smooth color finish, then you want to add a whole pound more water and make sure that you activate all of those little crystals. Okay, so we're going to move on. I have another piece of paper. This time we're going to be playing with Lizzie's Cup of Tea Teal. That's a mouthful. It is such a beautiful color, though. It is my favorite from this release. Okay, so again, pop that little lid open, and then you're just going to shake out the pigment and then activate it with a little bit of water. This one has blues and greens, a little bit of yellow. I'm thinking a little bit of copper, which is really, really pretty. That's a very nice combination. It's kind of Tibetan teal, kind of taken up a few notches, I think. So again, really, really pretty colors. Now we're going to move on, and we're going to do the card base. And this is the Starburst Sprays. I'm going to shake this up. Unfortunately, this sprayer doesn't work, so I've decided to do some ink smooshing for my background. So again, I have a piece of watercolor paper. I'm working on my glass mat because it's so easy to clean it up. I'm going to be popping some paint down. I am wetting my watercolor paper first, and then I'm adding some splotches. Okay, and then I'm going to wet it again. You want to keep everything else kind of out of the way. Okay, so using my glass mat to smoosh that ink around, I've dried it with my heat tool, and then I'm going to add some more. And I've decided to use my glass mat this time. I'm going to put the ink down on the glass mat, and then I am going to smoosh it into my paper. Okay, so if you want it really dark, then do it this way. If you want it a little bit lighter, then you want to spritz the ink with water before you smoosh onto your paper. And each time you do this, you want to dry each of the levels in between, and it adds very nice detail and builds up the layer of color on your card base. This is going to be the background for my card. I really like this gray. It's a really pretty color. Here we go. Here's all the panels I'm going to use on today's card, and I have this blue splotchy one that I'm going to save for another day. Moving on to the stamping, we're going to use the Watercolor Flowers stamp set from Alex Syberia Designs. There is multiple level stamping images in this set. We're going to use the outline one. I'm rubbing my paper that I just created onto a paper towel, getting rid of any of the little crystals that maybe didn't activate when we were playing with the water, making sure I have a smooth surface as possible, as this is watercolor paper, so we are going to have to stamp this a few times. There's quite a few different sizes of flowers in this set. I'm using 3 different sizes, and I'm going to restamp the smallest one a couple times for a total of 5. So I'm using VersaFine Clair Nocturne ink. This is the blackest ink that I know of. I love using this stuff when I need a really, really black, crisp image. And again, I'm going to stamp this at least twice so that I get a nice dark image. And we're going to repeat this numerous times. I'm going to clean off the stamps with a chamois so that I can move that small one. I'm putting the other that I'm not going to use back onto the stamp mat, and then adding the little guy, and we're going to stamp this twice more. And I just sped this up a little bit. Okay, and then I'm going to move it to a 3rd location and stamp it twice again. Once I'm finished with that, again, I'm going to clean this off and move the stamp back over onto the stamp mat. And then we are going to take the centers of these flowers, and we are also going to stamp them in black. It makes it a little bit more dramatic. So there is a flower center for each one. You'll see in the stamp set that they have drawn a line around the pieces that all go with the same flowers, because this is a layered stamping set. So I'm just grabbing the centers for each of these, and again, I'm going to have to repeat this a couple of times because I've used one of the stamps 3 times. Okay, so again, I am going to ink up with the VersaFine Clair, the Nocturne ink, and again, I'm going to have to stamp this a couple of times, especially these guys, because they're solid image, so sometimes they take a little bit more ink. You might want to stamp it 2 or 3 times until you just get a really nice solid image. With this ink, you really only need twice. Okay, so I'm removing the 2 big ones. Excuse me, got a little frog in my throat this morning. And I'm going to move the small one over to the next flower. And again, we're going to ink that up a couple of times. And then we're going to pick that up and move it to the top one. And we're going to finish stamping the center for that flower. This is a really fun stamp set. You can do all kinds of different things with it. You can watercolor it, you can layer ink stamp it, heat emboss it, and color it with your Copic markers if you want to. Switching over to the blue, and I'm going to do my leaves in this blue. And there are 2 leaf stamps. There's one that has a double leaf, and then there's one that has a single. And once again, I'm just going to line these little guys up, and I'm going to stamp them in black. And I think I decided on 5 sets for this. And I end up using 4 on the front of the card and then 1 set on the inside of the card. So it was just enough. If you don't do the insides of your cards, then you really only need 4. Okay, just cleaning it off a little bit so I can pick it up and move it. moving it around. And what I'm doing is I'm kind of checking out a little bit of the blue where some of the crystals are a little bit darker than the other ones, and there's a nice mix of purple in this set as well. Again, this is the Butter the Bread blue, but they snuck in a little bit of purple, and it's quite pretty. And there's like a gray glimmer in it. It's really, really, really shiny. Okay, so there is my 4, and I'm going to do one more in the middle. And then we're going to take the coordinating dies and we're going to cut all these little guys out. Quick tip here, when you are finished with this cutting, go and wash your top plate for your cutting platform, because some of this ink transfers, and I ended up with blue and kind of yellow and orange ink all over that cutting plate. And if I was going to cut something white the next time around, it wouldn't be white. Okay, so here we go. I am doing some auditioning of where I would like these different pieces. I'm working on the gray panel that I created, and I've already attached it to a top folding A2 size white card base, and that's 4 1/4 by 11, scored and folded at 5 1/2. Next, I'm going to pull off a piece of press and seal, and I am going to use that. I'm going to press it down over top of my flowers, and it's going to hold everything in place for me so that I can flip them over and add some foam tape onto the back of them, and then I can place it nicely back onto my card. This is a super easy way of holding everything in place, and you can use this piece multiple times, so don't throw it out, just put it somewhere safe. And here are my finished cards. I did a couple of them with a couple of the different colors. I love this little orangey one. Pretty colors with the teal leaves. And I've got a couple of sentiments that I want to put down. We're using the For You sentiments and the Self-Care sentiments, both from Alex Syberia Designs. And again, I'm going to use my black Nocturne ink and my Misty to make sure I get them stamped correctly. This is where you want to make sure that the lid of your Misty's clean, because I just put my whole finished card in there. Okay, and then I'm going to close it, and it's going to touch everything that I just did. Thankfully, I cleaned my lid, and I could just stamp my sentiment a couple of times, and good to go. Cleaning that one off, and I'm going to switch it out and the card so that I can put the other card in here and stamp the sentiment as well. Okay, making sure it's lined up and that it's straight. Adding my black ink. Okay, and we're almost done. You may have noticed in the stamp set that the one second from largest flower, I think it is, has a center that isn't solid. It's a whole bunch of tiny little dots, and I love this stamp. This is a perfect stamp for filling in spaces. I like to use it for creating what some people call wallpaper. I like to call it background noise, where you're adding just a little bit more interest around your art piece, and it actually helps to highlight it. And don't forget to turn your handle so that you're not stamping exactly the same way all the time. It adds interest as well. So here we go. Here's my finished cards for today's project, sharing with you some of the new different colors of Lindy's Magicals, along with the Alex Syberia beautiful watercolor flowers stamp and die set. Everything I've used today is linked underneath this video. There is also a link over to my blog where you can get a detailed description on how to make the cards and all the products used. And if you enjoyed today's video, please consider giving me a thumbs up. I would appreciate it. And here are a couple more images of the pretty cards today, and at the end I have added another video that I think that you might like. So until next time, toodles!